years ago at what's called the Cairo +5 conference. So the UN does this thing where they like have commissions, and then they name the new commission of the same topic, just the old one plus the amount of years since the last one. So the Cairo conference was in '94 on population and development. The follow-up conference 5 years later in '99, it's called Cairo +5 on population and development, kind of a follow-up. And at the conference, there was a group of people, young people, all from developed countries, from Western countries, that came forward and said, we represent the youth of the world. And here's what the youth of the world want. They put forward 8 demands, 5 of which were relatively unobjectionable, 3 of which were abortion on demand is a human right, the deletion of parental rights, and sexual rights for 10-year-olds, for children as young as 10. So it's contraception for 10-year-olds, and parents can't do anything about it. That's kind of the vision. But fourth, and the idea was the youth of the world unanimously want these things. So Anna, who was there through some connections in the pro-life movement, she was there, and she with a group of friends came back the next day with a pink flyer that basically, just as succinctly as possible, said that this vision that was offered the day before does not represent the world's youth. The world's youth are looking for things, first of all, far more, especially in developing countries, are looking for things far more basic, like food, food, water, clean water, a good education. They're looking for these very basic needs. They're not looking for, abortion and population control to be shoved down their throat, which was exactly what was happening. But this was such kind of a monumentous thing, and it caused so much disruption, they're passing out these flyers, that it basically shut negotiations down for a day. And then, as Deborah was saying, all these developing countries came forward thanking, like one by one, thanking them for the stand for their stand, and asking them to create a more permanent presence at the UN. That's how the World Youth Alliance got started. We are, I think it's fair to say, a pro-life organization, though we don't fit the typical mold of what people think of a pro-life organization, I think in 2 ways. We think the pro-life movement is great, obviously. I don't know, is anyone going to the march in a few weeks? Yeah. I'll be there. Yeah, so the pro-life movement in the United States is great and important, obviously, important witness. WYA is a little bit different, I think, in 2 ways. The first way is that we have more of an international focus. So, because we started at the UN, and really in the middle of this ever-continuing debate at the UN between the more developed countries that want to push population control on the developing countries that don't want it, and want to be able to accept like an aid package without abortion being tacked onto it, which happens all the time. We'll feed you, we'll give you this much food, this much aid, but you just have to legalize your abortion laws. So that's one thing, we have an international focus. The second thing is we try to get at the philosophical conflict or opposition underlying this whole situation. So it's like, think of if you're having a conversation with somebody who's pro-choice. There's a few ways it can go, but like typically you'll start talking about what is the fetus, is it a human person, is it not a human person, oh it is a human person, and human persons have dignity, thus abortion is wrong, gravely wrong. Well, then the objection is going to get raised, well, what the hell do you mean by dignity? What is dignity? I mean, you can say the human being has dignity, the fetus has dignity, but if you don't know what that means, it's just a word. And somebody can just say, well, that's just meaningless. It's just a word you're making up that doesn't have any real grounding to it. So then, if we're going to win this argument in any capacity, we need to know what we mean by dignity. If we try to say the human being has worth, and that includes the fetus, not just the fetus, obviously, the human being, no matter what situation they find themselves in, no matter what they've done, no matter where they are, no matter where they come from, that they have worth, we need to know why. We need to have the philosophical foundation of why they have worth. We need to be able to explain that. So that's where the other kind of side of why is education. we do work in advocacy still, but we also do work in education, trying to educate people on the foundations of human dignity, what it means to say a human being has dignity. So, if you let me, I'll just explore that a bit. I won't go, I know like people don't get that excited about philosophy. Like I get that. Like think back to our freshman philosophy class and we're like, oh, this is really boring. And like there's nerds like me that like get excited about it, but like
we have a philosophy professor right over here too.
Really? Really cool. Okay.
No, I graduated with a degree for philosophy.
Okay.
I'm not a philosophy professor.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Very cool. Okay. I got.
My BA was in philosophy.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Mine too. Nice. So maybe you guys are excited about philosophy, which is great. Most people like roll their eyes. But it's important to know what we're talking about is not like what I did in grad school, which is like you're like, what does Aristotle mean by this? Like, okay, well, that's kind of important for for a select few people that want to go into academia. Here, what we're talking about is getting these key ideas of these texts and from these authors, from these philosophers, so that anybody, it can be universally applied. Whether you're going to go into law, into medicine, into you're going to be a steel worker, it doesn't, a blue collar worker of any kind. Like knowing why the human being has dignity and what that means, like you can bring that into your daily life to make sure you are living a life that upholds your own dignity, that upholds the dignity of those around you, and that when it comes to these hot button political issues like abortion or what have you, where this is a central focus, you can have a conversation about it and be clear about why you believe what you believe. Okay, so like if we're just gonna dive into the philosophy a little bit, there's two rival views of the human person being offered. And these rival views, like in that conflict of the UN I was talking about, between those pushing population control, those resisting it, there's a philosophical divide, and this is what the philosophical divide largely is. Those who understand the human person as, in the way the church does, frankly, as a being that has intellect and will, intellect being our ability to know the truth, the good and the beautiful, and to be directed towards what's good, true, and beautiful. And then finally, will being the ability to make choices based on that fundamental directionality, that fundamental, if we were going to get Greek about it, we would say teleology. It's like the Greek word telos. It's the way Aristotle, the image he has is like an archer shooting for a target. We have this target, which is the good, the true, the beautiful. We're aiming for it. We might miss a little bit. As a Catholic, we'd call that sin. But we're ultimately aiming for it. That's our destination. We want to be with God, to put it in a Catholic sense. And so what we do is to be truly free is to make decisions, to make choices that will bring one to that destination, what they're seeking. God, the good, the true, the beautiful. Right? We can understand this in terms of God and Christ as Catholics, but even if you don't understand, even if you don't like believe in the Nicene Creed, right? Like Aristotle, not a Christian, could say that there is an end of human life, and that end is somehow is a transcendent. It is goodness, truth, and beauty, and that we become fulfilled by pursuing it well. So this is something, even though it conforms with Catholicism, it's something that you don't have to be Catholic to understand. It's something you don't have to be Catholic to be able to, you can have a conversation with those who aren't Catholics and still fundamentally agree on this point. Okay, so that's one view of the human person, as a being of intellect and will, pursuing goodness, truth, and beauty. What's the other view? The other view understands, maybe still understands the human being to have intellect and will, but they're a little different. Will is now at the top. What comes first is your desires. Maybe the intellect is still there, but intellect is useful to basically bring your desires about. You want to, You desire to build this thing. Well, intellect is just about knowing how much wood you have to cut and how much you have to measure it. And it's purely technical. It's purely about calculating and trying to bring about the conditions, through technology or whatever, to bring about what you want. That's intellect now. Will is really what's primary. What do you want? What is your choice? Your choice is ultimate. And ultimately, what you choose is good, and what you don't want, that's evil. Now, there's a problem here, right? If the will becomes primary, and it becomes about free choice, maximizing choice, what I choose is good, what I don't like is bad. I mean, does anyone see what the immediate problem is going to be? What if he wants, sorry, what's your name again? Dad. What if Dad wants something differently from what I want? What if he thinks murder is bad, but I think murder is good? Well, who's to say I'm wrong and he's right? We both have wills. We both have desires. Who's to say my desire is better than his? No one. Right? So what happens? You have people who all are operating on different senses of what it means to be the good life, or what it is to live the good life, and are concerned about just getting what they want. Well, this obviously isn't going to last, really. You're going to have conflicts, as we talked about. So what really is going to happen is the people in power, what they choose to be good, that's ultimately what is good. It's ultimately now the people in power get to make these decisions. There is no fundamental goodness, truth, and beauty beyond what the guy in charge says is good, true, and beautiful. So I talked earlier about, in the holistic view of the human person, what freedom is. Freedom is to be opened up for the good, to pursuing what one is seeking deep down in their heart. That's freedom. What's the view of freedom here? It's pure choice, pure liberation, the ability to make any choice you want and not have anybody tell you that you're wrong for making it or prevent you from making it. That's the new sense of freedom. So if we try to take this and bring it back to the abortion question, how is abortion justified from the pro-choice side of things? What's the slogan?
Choice.
My body, my choice. I heard somebody say it. My body, my choice. It's all about choice. Liberating oneself from, it becomes now freedom, as I mentioned, freedom from constraint. Well, now we're not talking about constraint from other people preventing you from doing what you want. We're not talking about the government preventing you from doing what you want. We're talking about nature itself. Liberation from the nature of motherhood, the nature of femininity. You were born to be a female. You didn't choose it. You were born to have the capacity for motherhood. You were born to, if you have sex with somebody, you have to carry a child in yourself for 9 months. The man doesn't. All that stuff, you didn't choose. So it's unfair. It's unjust. And abortion is the means of correcting it, the means of asserting your freedom and your ability to choose at the expense of everything else. So that's one side of it, at the level of liberation from nature. The other side is, as I said, those in power get to now make decisions about what's good and evil. They also get to make decisions about who has human dignity and who doesn't. So if they say that a certain race doesn't have human dignity, well, they say that a certain ethnicity, a certain gender, a certain designated cultural group doesn't have dignity, well, that's reality. There's no greater standard or reality or transcendent good to appeal to other than what the people in power say. So, I mean, and this has, been the case. There's a guy, philosopher kind of law named John Finnis who talks about this stuff a lot. And he brings up how he takes the Roe v. Wade decision, but also ties it back to the Dred Scott decision. The Dred Scott decision, in his mind, being a decision which took dignity, or was those in power declaring that slaves don't have dignity, essentially. That enslaved black Americans do not have worth as human beings, the same way that white Americans do. And Roe v. Wade is just another decision in that vein of saying this group does not have worth. This group, dignity, yeah, sure, it applies to all these people, but these people are on the outside. The only way around this problem, this is going to constantly keep coming up. So the people in power kind of excluding a group of people, whether it's the fetus, whether it's the elderly, which is like also happening, right? With like the death with dignity euthanasia stuff. The elderly are also being the sick, the infirm, the disabled. I mean, we have entire countries where, there's news stories celebrating that Down syndrome has been cured, right? It hasn't been cured. What happens is we murdered everybody with Down syndrome. I mean, these things are happening. So the only way to escape this problem is to say that human beings don't get to decide who has dignity. People, like your worth, your dignity is something guaranteed by something greater than human beings. As a Catholic, you would say it's guaranteed by God, by you being made in the image and likeness of God. You have having a relationship to the transcendent, cause of the universe in a special way. So, if we just get back to this, bring it back up a level, we can kind of see that this distinction, this fundamental disagreement, what is the human being? A willful being or a child of God, or a being meant to pursue goodness, truth, and beauty? This is the debate we're having. Like, is childhood, is, like, if we go back to these first three questions, is abortion, is the child something good? Is it something, that the woman is gifted with? Or is it a constraint on her liberty? Is the family a means to flourish as human beings, a means to learn what it means to live the good life, to be nurtured and cared for? Or is it this patriarchal institution that entraps children and mothers and, causes them to be dominated by the desires of men? Something like that, I guess would be their claim. Is ultimately the family having children, is this good, or is this somehow bad, patriarchal, limiting? That's the fundamental debate that's being had. So if we go back to the World Youth Alliance, what are we trying to do about it? So I already mentioned we're trying to work in the area of advocacy, or where we talk with developing countries and we help them craft language, introduce them into documents that, help them stave off this kind of constant assault, for lack of a better term, from the more powerful nations. That's one side of it. The other side is education. So a lot of what I've been talking about right now, human dignity, understanding what dignity is, we try to educate people in these questions. And we do this through a few ways. First is our certified training program, which is for any of our members. A lot of what I've kind of gone through is addressed like originally in these texts. There's a bunch of like famous authors you may have heard of. I mean, John Paul II, I'm sure you've heard of. Or he was Carol Wojtyła, but he's in there. Gandhi, we have a text by Gandhi in there. We have text by C.S. Lewis in there. So text from a variety of authors from a series of different religious backgrounds. Because as you said, this isn't, to understand this much, you don't have to be Catholic. It will get further confirmed by being Catholic, but you don't have to be Catholic to understand the human person has dignity. And so we try to educate people in these questions and in this fundamental idea of dignity so that they can, as I said before, no matter what they choose to do, take that with them and become leaders in the world and lead with it in mind. The other program is something called the Human Dignity Curriculum. So the Human Dignity Curriculum is something, Deborah was talking about it in the introduction a little bit, and it's something we started about 10 years ago or so, like halfway through WYA's history. Our first 10 years or so were really dedicated to advocacy. But we realized there was a bit of a problem, and this is the problem. Let's go back to the very beginning. I talked about the Cairo Plus 5 conference. That was 5 years from Cairo. The Cairo conference in '94 was a massive kind of battleground over a lot of this stuff, and really maybe one of the first battlegrounds. And people will be surprised to hear this because they hear the UN, they think, oh, the UN, like, you know, pro-abortion, like, you know, bad in all these ways, which I'm not going to say it's entirely not true. But there is no place in international law where it says there is a right to an abortion, anywhere. There is one place at the Cairo conference where it says the word reproductive health, one place. It also says, largely because of the Holy See's, the Holy See expended a lot of political capital to make sure this was the case. It says explicitly reproductive health does not include abortion. It surprises people. Most people think that can't be the case because, you know, they hear about the UN doing a lot of these nefarious things happening at the UN, which is true. But according to the policy, there is no place where it says abortion is a right, and the only place where the word reproductive comes up at all, it says abortion isn't a part of this. Okay, but what's the problem? We have this thing called the policy wheel, which if you can think of just like a circle. Policies on this side, funding's up here, programming is down here. The idea behind this is just that what policies do is they drive funding allocation. You set up a series of goals, and then countries say, okay, we're going to block off this much funding for each of these goals. Okay, so that's policy to funding. Funding to implementation is where it gets interesting. Because, I mean, here's a problem, and a problem we did run into. Let's say reproductive health does not include abortion. Great, we won that battle. Reproductive health, though, let's say, does include something like comprehensive sexual education. Okay, well, we got that. So we have that in the policy section, and then we have to set aside, earmark a certain amount of funding for sexual education. Okay, great. Okay, it's time for implementation. Well, there's only a series of programs to choose from. And in fact, let's say there's only one or two programs to choose from, and one of them is Planned Parenthood's program. They're offering it for very little, if not free. Probably go with Planned Parenthood's program. Do you think Planned Parenthood's program follows the understanding of reproductive health that the Holy See fought for back in '94? Of course not. So you can win the policy side of the wheel, so to speak, but if you're not offering alternative programming, it doesn't matter. The programming is what's concretely affecting people. It's what's touching people. It's what's really getting into the nitty-gritty. if you just win the policy side of things, you're not fighting the whole fight, so to speak. So enter the human dignity curriculum. The human dignity curriculum was a way in which we tried to take a lot of the stuff I've kind of been talking about, and a lot of the stuff that this certified training program, as I mentioned, goes into. But now we're talking about K through 8, right? So they're no longer going to be able to read Wojtyła. They're no longer going to be able to read C.S. Lewis. They're no longer going to be able to read Aristotle or anything like that. But we have to try to take the same information and put it in a curriculum that these students are going to be able to understand. Well, I mean, why? Well, because if you look around us, right? The alternative, we were trying to get a certain set of values like instilled in young people. The church is obviously trying to do this, but all people, I think, of goodwill, in a sense, are trying, even if they're not Catholic, as I've said, are trying to do this, trying to put a set of values and pass those on to generations preceding. Here's the problem. The opposing set of values, they're a lot louder. And they're being bombarding us from all sides constantly. Children especially, children as well, right? Children from a very young age are being bombarded by this kind of the opposing ideology, the opposing way of thinking. The way of thinking that says abortion is a human right, that family is an oppressive structure, that motherhood is oppressive, and all these things. That ideology is constantly being bombarded. It's children from a very young age. So if we're saying to ourselves, well, we'll wait until like these kids start reading Aristotle in freshman year of college, you've lost them. You've already lost them. It's too late. So we're going to need to, at an earlier age, start to teach these values and disseminate them in a way that, like, plant seeds. Like, obviously you're not going to get somebody to, like, as a kindergartner or even an 8th grader to really, like, understand complex philosophy. But if you can at least plant seeds that pull from examples, like, relevant to their world and their experience, then you can plant the seeds for future understanding. And you can make sure that these students, these young children, will be able to, like, preserve these values and be able to actually pass them on to future generations. So the human dignity curriculum is, if I had to kind of summarize its philosophy, it's Aristotelian anthropology and ethics. So what is the human person? How should we live a good life? And how does it go through this in a way suitable for children? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. For like the dianema, Aristotle's anthropology goes through the hierarchy of beings. So we can explain, from example, to students, what's the difference between the first distinction would be living and non-living things. The second distinction would be between plants and animals and human beings, right? And then going through the different abilities of each. So plants can reproduce and grow and sustain themselves. Animals can do all those three things, but they can also move and sense and feel passion, right? They have like anger and sadness and happiness and all those things, emotions. Human beings can do all the above, but they can also think and choose. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Intellect and will. Teaching them that that's what they are. They're beings with intellect and will. It's different from what the Planned Parenthood program is going to teach them, right? Planned Parenthood program is going to teach them they're just this like sex-crazed being that like can't control themselves, so have some condoms to mitigate your risk, right? Like you can't control your behavior, so take condoms so you can mitigate the negative effects of your behavior. It's starting on the wrong foot. The right foot is to say, you're a human being capable of knowing the good, the true, the beautiful, and acting accordingly. That's the first half. The second half is to say, okay, what does it mean to do that? right? And obviously this looks different from K to 8, right? But you can explain to children through, once again, drawing from relevant examples, what it means to do the excellent thing and what it means to do the less than excellent thing. Then you can walk them through that. And that's what the second half tries to do. Once it establishes you're a being with intellect and will, it's like, okay, so what does it mean to think well and to make good decisions? Once that foundation has been set, that's the human dignity curriculum, we have the accompanying program, which is Teen Fem and Teen Men, which is part of the FEM program, which Deborah was talking about. And these are what people more traditionally think about when they think of sexual education. It goes through like anatomy, it splits the boys and girls up into 2 different classes, whereas the HDC can be co-ed. And the idea is precisely this, to first lay the foundation of what it means to be a human being in this fullest sense. Not in this reductive sense, not in this I'm a willful being only, in the fullest sense. And then you can go through the sexual education, the anatomy and all that stuff, because you've laid the proper foundation. So we can offer comprehensive sexual education, but we can do it on our terms, not on their terms. Let's see, how much time do I have left? Okay, 9:15. You guys, 9:30 is, okay.
Unless you
so-
want to do a longer Q&A, whatever you feel is good.
Well, Q&A sounds more interesting than me blabbing on much longer. So I think I'm good to leave it there if you guys are. Do you guys have any questions or anything? Yeah.
How do you get this curriculum to children?
Yeah, sure. So we form partnerships. One of our biggest partners is with a charter school called WYA up in the Bronx. And what we do is we first set up a partnership with them. We go through we have like printing costs for the curriculum, but basically we go through the whole process with them, like figuring out how many students they have, how many like copies they'll need, and then we train the teachers so that they know exactly how to implement the program. So it's a matter of finding partnerships that are partner schools that are interested in this kind of program, and then like logistically getting the supplies to them that they need, and making sure they're trained, the teachers are trained so they really know how to teach the concepts in there. Because I mean, like this is not something that a lot of even veteran teachers are used to teaching, right? Like a lot of veteran teachers are not used to teaching kids like how to live an excellent life, right? Like, I mean, that's a bad thing. Like, I think that's unfortunate that that's not more normal, but it's not. So that's the next step, is really to train the teachers and help them through the process.
So these are secular charter schools?
So WYA is actually a public charter school. But many of our partnerships are with Catholic schools. So we have a few public school partnerships, lots of Catholic schools. We're international too. So like, for example, one of our biggest partnerships recently was with the bishops of Tanzania. So in Tanzania, more or less the Catholic bishops administer like a very large percentage of the infrastructure that includes hospitals and schools. So the Teen Fem and Teen Men programs were going to be like nationwide, enrolling in their schools. And then the different parts of the FEM program, which deal with like the medical side of things, were also enrolling in a lot of the hospitals. So we have, so it varies from like big, like that's our first nationwide like partnership. But like in the United States, they're mostly, like charter schools or a series of or Catholic schools for the most part.
Do you work with classical school? You know, there's like this movement to have more, there are classical charter schools, and that sounds like it's kind of along the line with the
Yes.
philosophy aspect.
It is. We do have partnerships with a few classical schools, but I don't remember. I want to say Great Hearts, but I don't think we have one with Great Hearts, though that is a classical school. I couldn't give you a name, but I do know we have worked with them in the past. Yeah.
It's just, I can't even, my mind boggles thinking, how do you find these partners?
Yeah.
Because people are so conditioned to go the Planned Parenthood route.
It can
It's
be-
mind boggling that you can
Yeah.
find some in
It
New York.
can be tough, Yeah, it can be hard, to be frank, but it's just a matter of, so this is where, WYA in its most fundamental sense is like you could think of it as like a network of people. So what we try to do is we try to gain new members. We have people sign up, and to become a member is to be a part of the network of the World Youth Alliance. What we then try to do is through through gaining new members and forming members, to take them through the certified training program and such. We then try to use those relationships to like build out new partnerships to enroll our programs. So it's a matter of building membership and really like getting these people to be really excited about WYA and interested in WYA, so that if they are in a position at a school or something to, implement the HTC, they will, right? So that's kind of a big part of how we try to roll out these programs. Yeah. Thank you for your questions. Yeah.
So this is like revamping the sex ed classes. How young do you go when it comes to like?
So the HDC, taken of itself, is K to 8. Teen Fem and Men is 6 to 8.
Okay, so from like K to middle school, like
Yeah.
high school?
Yeah, right. So, the human dignity curriculum itself, which is like the character formation side of things, that goes all the way from kindergarten to 8th grade. Eventually, it will go up to 12th grade. We still are working on the high school version of the human dignity curriculum, but eventually it will go all the way up. Right now, we have the Teen Fem and Teen Men, so the part that goes like separate the boys and girls and can follow the HDC and goes into more like the anatomy and stuff. It's like traditional, as what people generally think about when they think about sexual education. That is for right now 6, 7, and 8, and eventually will also be for high school when we get there. So.
Do you have? Are you just working in like New York, or do you have different chapters in all over the U.S., international?
Yes, we have chapters all over the world. So why I probably should have explained this at the beginning. WYA is international organization. I like to say it's like global but small. There's like 30 employees of WYA probably in total, but we're spread all around the globe. We have what we do is we split the we split the globe into 6 regions. So those are North America, Latin America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and then Asia. We say Asia Pacific. And there's 6 different regional offices. So one in here in New York, which I'm a part of, Mexico City, Philippines, Nairobi, Kenya, Brussels, and Beirut, Lebanon. So all these different regions try to implement their projects. So try to find new partners, build a member base, train new members like through the certified training program and everything. All these regions are trying to manage these different projects on their own, and then all of us kind of also though operate together. The headquarters is also here, and so we're working in our own regions and managing the projects in our own regions. We're also being coordinated to kind of work together as well.
So did you say they're like missionaries? I mean, the formation, like you're sending them out.
There's something like that. This is a kind of a missionary aspect insofar as when we try to, so anybody can go through the certified training program, but our interns have to go through it. So we have an internship program, which in North America is mostly college-age students who can come to our headquarters. We're on the Upper East Side. We have a townhouse there, so we work and live in the same building, and we offer housing for interns. So we offer free housing in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That's kind of how we offer compensation, and it's obviously an opportunity to advance our goals. So it's like a typical internship where it's we put you to work, but we also view it as a opportunity for formation. So all of our interns go through the certified training program, and all of them go through also something additional called the white paper training, which is more getting into the nitty-gritty of policy proposals, more on the advocacy side of things. and we want to make sure all of them go through it so that when they leave WYA, they take their, like, how they've been formed, they take that in a sort of missionary like way into whatever they go into next, whether that's into academia, into the professional world, what have you. Yeah.
And then another question,
That's good.
so your program, is it like, do you incorporate theology of the body, or do you want to spiritualize it?
I would say implicitly theology of the body is operating a lot in what we do. I mean, we are very much caught in like the John Paul II, and John Paul II's philosophy, like undergirds a lot of WYA, this philosophy of human dignity, and the way like particularly John Paul II talked about human dignity. So I would say we don't have reading groups that go through theology of the body or anything like that, but theology of the body operates under the surface in a lot of our programs. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Or?
So how many subjects are there? It's for K through 8, but how many subjects in terms of, the sexual education you mentioned for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade?
So it's one curriculum.
One
It's
curriculum.
Yeah. So the subject is
Human dignity.
human dignity and human excellence.
Okay, but is this one class that gets taught among other classes, or is this
Yes.
curriculum for
That's the
a
idea.
holistic curriculum?
No, yeah, that's the idea. One class that gets taught amongst other classes.
And this will be like, so if they have eight classes or
Yeah.
5 classes a day, right?
Yeah.
So this is one out of the 5. The other 5 might be math, science. whatever,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So human dignity is a curriculum, a class, a subject in itself.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And it includes like philosophy, civics.
Yes,
And
and
everything.
we'd
And
obviously
now-
recommend it be integrated with other courses or whatever. We don't want it to be thought of like this is just, this is the human dignity curriculum and this is separated from everything else. We encourage it to be kind of holistically interwoven with the rest of what the school's doing, but it is, it's its own course that really can be done in like half a year. So a lot of schools like use like a homeroom period or something like that, where they do it as like kind of an additional like course for like, it can be done in 8 weeks pretty easily.
Okay, so it's just a semester,
Yes,
course.
more or less, yeah.
but every year you take it in a different level, right?
So it depends on the schools. Some schools have ordered it only for 1 grade, some for multiple, some for every grade. One thing we've done recently, we revised the grades in such a way that they're, about 2 years ago, they were like 8 and 6, for example, were too similar. So what we've done is we've really spaced them out more so that every grade is a new experience. Even though it's going through similar ideas, it goes through similar ideas in a way that's more,
Different level of difficulty.
yeah, it's aware of cognitive development, right? And what different ages are are able to understand. Yeah, great, thank you for your question. Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit more about the excellence point, part of it? And
Sure.
I know middle school, particularly in the areas of sexuality, like it would be really interesting to know how chastity is addressed within the curriculum, or if it's not specifically addressed, maybe like in a different way, how they go about bringing excellence in that area of life.
Yeah. I would say what the curriculum's trying to do is to let students know that there is a more excellent and a less excellent way to live out their sexuality, right? Taken as a whole. There is a better way to live out one's sexuality and a worse way. And that's not obviously just confined to sexuality. It's confined, as you said, we understand this in a lot of other areas, but there's some other areas we want to forget it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a better way to live and a worse way to live. It's so funny that this has been kind of, I just broke it. Like I had a friend who is now he's now a very good friend of mine. I sponsored him entering the church. But he was not Catholic when he was first in undergrad. And his freshman philosophy professor, who's like a very, very good teacher, said something that really shocked him. He'd never heard this before. Said just the following. We need to shed this myth that there isn't a better and worse way to live life. He'd never heard that before. Really, like put that way, that there is a more excellent and a less excellent way to live. He actually never heard that before. And it never really had like dawned on him that, oh, we don't all just kind of you do you. Like there's a better way to live and a worse way to live. We should aim for what's better. So when you come to really internalize that, then all of a sudden these discussions about chastity and everything, they're like made a lot easier, right? Like no longer are we just, can we be accused of just like asserting rules for the sake of it? You know, just being like hell-bent on this like rigid legalism of this is how one is to like this is how one is to live like out their sexual life licitly, this is how they do it illicitly, and don't ask any questions about it, right? Like, no, like that's what we're accused of doing. We're accused of just being like anti-sex and wanting to just like control people's lives. But once we've established the solid foundation and showed that there is a better and worse way to live, and there's a better way and worse to live in our sexuality, then all of a sudden that argument, that like objection just completely falls apart. Because it's clear that we're no longer doing this for the sake of it or just to like make a rule for the hell of it to sexually repress people or whatever. We're doing this because there's a better and worse way to live. And these rules concerning chastity and everything are about trying to help us live the best kind of life that we can. To live an excellent life and to be truly fulfilled. So I think that's really what the curriculum is like trying to get across. And I think like it's almost like with the abortion thing, like the CTP, the Certified Training Program, like it's once again more getting into the philosophical foundations of human dignity. But once you come to understand that, like the human being, like you have to start with the human being as something that has worth, that can't be taken away from it, then like we don't even need to like go into the nitty-gritty of the abortion question. We've already formed that person in such a way that when they get to that question and really think about it, they'll understand what the right answer is, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the same here. Like if you get people to understand that there is a more and less excellent way to live out one's sexuality, they'll come to this conclusion on their own. Like what is the best way to live it? To live it in a way, you know, in a loving relationship where one cares about the other person, they're cared for and kind, and it's able to become fruitful and mean something more than just just being something, you know, meaningless hedonism. So yeah.
I guess did your friend realize right away that he disagreed with his professor? Is that why he entered the church, or did it take time for him to?
It took some time for him to enter the church, but it was that was I think a beginning of his conversion. It's like. Just this like relativism he'd been raised in, just totally like shattering. So yeah.
So I teach high school, and I was wondering. Cool. I know you said that you don't have a curriculum for high school yet, but do you have any like resources to help develop, particularly like Catholic boys?
Yeah.
In terms of like the philosophy aspect, because we do a lot of like the theology, but
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's two things. What grades do you teach, like 9 through 12, or?
Well, 12 in particular, for instance, we teach theology of the body at 12th grade.
Yeah.
But like you said, and I completely agree with you, like sometimes the kids are already making decisions already as early as freshman and definitely by senior year.
Yeah.
So having that foundation is really important.
Yeah.
So we're trying to have like little programs here and there for sophomores.
Yeah.
Because TLB for seniors, I find it's sometimes a little too late.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always good to teach it.
I'm sure you have students that are like already like non-believers by the time they're in senior year.
Yeah, or just feel, if you're teaching them theology of the body, they feel judged, or they feel like, who are you to tell me how to live my life and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. So the certified training program is tough for high schoolers, but it's not unheard of. And there's some texts in there that high schoolers I think could definitely find easier to approach than others. Particularly like the C.S. Lewis text, which is on the abolition of man. I don't know if anyone's read that, but it's really, really good. So that's the first thing. I can send you that if you'd like, and that's just a collection of primary texts that really are getting at these issues. And there's, especially when it comes to 12th grade, a lot of those texts, I think, I think your students could approach. So that's the first thing I would say. The Human Dignity curriculum will be, as I said, launching in 9 through 12, hopefully within a year. So that's something else to look out for. In terms of other resources, I mean, those would be in terms of education, those would probably be our primary resources. So, yeah, is that, think answer the question? Yeah. Any other?
How long is the certification program?
Yeah, so well, the certified training program can happen it really depends. So what it is it's 7 chapters. It's about 300 pages in total. It goes from it starts more like, first it begins like with the history of WYA. So like the whole like pink flyer and story at the UN, like it goes through that in a little more depth, and I summarized it for you. Then it starts in the philosophical side of things, and then gradually gets more and more closer to like the legal side of things, like international policy in the UN. So it tries to give you the foundation and then bring you to the kind of advocacy, legal side of things. And so it can happen on a series of time scales. So like we have 3 batches throughout the year where we typically have like trainees. So people can sign up on our website, and then I put them into a program where what they do is they read through the text, and then usually just every 2 weeks is the deadline for them to submit their answers for the chapters. So they read the text, and then there's 2 to 3 questions at the end where they write 300 to 500 word responses. They submit those to me.
It's online?
Online.
Okay.
Yeah, they submit those to me. I will give them feedback. They'll do that for 7 chapters. And then in the end, we'll have an interview where we'll schedule a time if they're remote to Skype. If it's like an intern, we'll do a face-to-face. Or if they're even local, we could do a face-to-face. And just talk about the ideas. I'll ask them questions. I do it kind of more of as a conversation, like an exam. And then afterwards, one becomes accredited. So that's kind of the process. So we've done intense and certain like programs. We've done intense CTPs where people do it in like 2 weeks, or people can do it over the course of 3 months, or people can do it over the course of a whole year. So there's some flexibility with how it works, but that's kind of the process. Yeah.
You do have some in-person. When I took the Track A training, we met as a group.
Yes.
And so, but it took a few months, just because we would meet regularly.
Yeah.
So that was one point. I don't know if you still do that. And then the other one, the Track B training. So it's just Track A and Track B, or?
So we kind of rename them.
Oh, okay.
It's now Track A is now the certified training program.
Okay.
And then Track B is the advocacy training I talked about earlier, the white paper training.
Okay.
Where it gets more into the policy, like
Okay.
particular policy proposals and solutions to a whole host of problems. So yeah, but we offer both. So
Okay.
yeah. Any other questions or?
He says anyone can participate in the training? Are there like?
Yes. Yep.
So
If they let me do it, anybody can do it.
I
You're a
mean,
certified teacher,
it
what do
has
you
to
mean?
be in person, or can we like
No.
online?
Yeah, exactly. So there's an online way to do it. So I have a paper here where you can sign up. If you want to just also mention you would be interested in the CTP, yeah. So we're about to start a new batch actually because it's usually spring, so January to March, summer, and then fall. And what we do is I'll sign you up online. I'll send you the series of texts, which you can either print off or read on your computer if you'd like to. I'll send you the PDF. And then you'll just read through and then just submit your answers. We'll go back and forth, and then finish with the interview. So yeah, anybody can do that. It can be done online. It can also be done flexibly. So like we have these set 3-period like batches throughout the year, but we understand people are busy and like we're not, you know, we don't want to, you know, we were more than happy to be flexible with people's schedules. So yeah, if you're interested, just let me know.
Flexible in terms of like we can decide like how fast we want to finish it.
How fast you want to finish it.
It's not like
When,
we have to be with the group and
Yeah.
participating in like discussion.
yeah, that's true too. So the group discussions are things. So it depends. We have discussions for our internship. So for our interns, and then if we did have a group in New York that was like really interested in doing it together, in that case before we've had discussions. But when it's all people doing it remotely, in-person discussions become difficult. We do something I'm experimenting with actually this batch new. Does anyone know what Slack is? Does anyone have Slack? Yeah.
I use it at work.
At work, yeah. So I actually don't use it at work, but I'm in a Slack with a group of friends. It's like a thing where you can constantly like have all these different channels and everyone can chat and ask questions or make comments in there. So I'm starting this, and it's like just kind of basically continues and, you know, it's constantly live. You can just pull up your phone. So I'm thinking of bringing all the trainees into it. So like if anyone has a question on like chapter 3, they can like ask it in there and then conversation can happen. So I'm thinking of doing something like that so we can have those kind of conversations remotely. But unless we have like it's hard to do local conversations unless we have like a group of people doing it in New York on the same schedule, which has happened before, but it doesn't always happen.
I'm from New Jersey, so.
Well, New York, New Jersey, you know, the tri-state area. Yeah. But yeah, anyone's welcome for the program for sure. Any other questions?
Just want to just overall follow up on how you started off with the whole philosophy of the human person and how, you know, we have this completely opposite view of, say, like secular or Planned Parenthood's view. And it just seems to me like natural law would really be the argument, because even they can't argue with this whole movement of environmentalism and nature and taking care of, you know, Earth. I just can't help but think that this is like the answer, because I mean that old saying that God always forgives, people sometimes forgive, but nature never forgives, is like really, so it's such the truth that you know, why can't we acknowledge that, you know, there is a better way to live? Because when you're not living your best life, you have all these natural consequences, you know, that take over your life and impede your ability to live a free and excellent life. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how big natural law is within the curriculum.
Absolutely, no.
But
I mean, what I'm talking about there between, you know, understanding the human person as one oriented towards the good, the true, and the beautiful, and then trying to make decisions based on that orientation. That is natural law theory, just being said in a different way.
Right.
So absolutely, yeah, natural law is key for sure. But that as a human being, we can understand, through understanding human nature, we can understand that there are better ways to fulfill our nature and worse ways, or ways in which we become more what we are, more human, ways in which we become less human, or actually turn away from what we are. That's absolutely kind of undergirding the whole thing. So yeah, I think that's great. Cool. Any other questions? Okay.
thank you so much.